were not only frozen out, but they were ignored. The whole strategy of the Europeans, and particularly Sir Keir Starmer, was to try and persuade the United States to get involved in a European plan. And so the Europeans have nowhere to go. And I fear that they will rhetorically keep supporting Ukraine and keeping financing Ukraine, but bow to the inevitable that Ukraine will have to agree to the Ukrainian elements of this deal.
So Sir Keir Starmer says the UK and Ukraine's other European allies will seek to strengthen Donald Trump's plan to end the war with Russia at a separate meeting at the G20 summit in South Africa. It may be too late, though. Trump has given Ukraine a deadline of next Thursday to accept the 28-point peace plan, which would see Ukraine make significant concessions or lose US support. Nicholas Williams is a Senior Associate Fellow of the European Leadership Network and a former Senior UK Ministry of Defence and NATO official. Nicholas, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's so good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us. There's also reporting this morning that the US Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll told European ambassadors and Western officials at a meeting in Kyiv late yesterday evening that he is optimistic that now is the time for peace. He also said, "We are not negotiating details." What do you make of the deal that's being proposed?
Well, I think that report is accurate. The Americans are going all out. They believe that Ukraine is in a very, very bad position. That's why the generals were there in Kiev to impress on the Ukrainians that their situation is bad. And the Americans are serious now on wanting to end the war quickly, and they will not negotiate with the Europeans. They'll only negotiate sequences and processes with the Ukrainians.
What do you think that tells us about the US approach to Europe, to Ukraine, and indeed to NATO?
Well, it tells us that the United States, and particularly Trump, is contemptuous of any serious negotiation with Europe. And it tells us that he doesn't believe that Europe is powerful enough to withstand him.
Yeah. How should they respond then, I suppose, given that European leaders it feels like, were quite blindsided by the peace plan drawn up by Steve Witkoff, the US Special Envoy, and Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, during their 3 days of talks? If the Europeans have been kind of frozen out, as it were, in all of this, what now is a suitable response?
Well, they were not only frozen out, but they were ignored. The whole strategy of the Europeans, and particularly Sir Keir Starmer, was to try and persuade the United States to get involved in a European plan. And so the Europeans have nowhere to go. And I fear that they will rhetorically keep supporting Ukraine and keeping financing Ukraine, but bow to the inevitable that Ukraine will have to agree to the Ukrainian elements of this deal.
One reading of this is that aiming for the best in a situation like this means that it becomes the enemy of the good. That actually this peace plan could be a reasonable basis for negotiation, that wars are ended by victory or by compromise. And within this deal, there is a guarantee of Ukraine's sovereignty. It provides some sort of security guarantee backed by the US as well. It also speaks of Ukrainian reconstruction. So yes, there are parts of this that will be really hard to swallow potentially for Ukraine, but is the best the enemy of the good here?
Well, yes, and that's what the Americans are arguing. They say that Ukraine is in such a bad military position that the sacrifice of fighting on will be worthless in terms of what they will gain. The territories will be lost anyway. And so that's what the Americans are arguing, and they've put together ideas. It's not a package as such, ideas for the European Union to give favourable terms, trade terms to the Ukraine. Well, the European Union hasn't been consulted. But still, the core of this agreement is the secession of the Donbass to Russia, and that's what Vladimir Putin wants. But it's also ceding his strategic political goals in terms of neutralization of Ukraine, demilitarization, and what the Russians call denazification, which is a Ukrainian government friendly to Russia.
President Putin's appeared to sort of embrace the deal. President Zelensky says Ukraine's being forced to choose between losing the support of the US or sacrificing its dignity. Is that right? Is he right that is the choice that they now have to make over these next few days?
Yes, it's perfectly right. And for Ukraine, the loss of American support is crucial. The White House, the Americans have threatened to cut off all intelligence support if the Ukrainians don't agree to this deal. And if that's so, then the Ukrainians would be firing into the dark, into the void when they're firing into Russia, and so they can't affect any damage to the oil installations or economic damage. They'll just be weaponless in effect.
Just finally, Nicholas, I suppose ultimately acceptance is based on how bad Zelensky and his officials assess the situation on the battlefield to be. And if Ukraine is in a position where it's about to collapse completely, as some have suggested, then maybe this deal is a good option, or parts of this deal to be negotiated may be a good option. But if that is the case, if Ukraine has to accept this deal because the situation on the battlefield is so dire, is it not fair to say that the entirety, really, of the Western world, Europe, the UK, NATO, have failed because we have not backed Ukraine to the point of victory?
Well, yes, and it's a significant strategic victory for Putin. The West, NATO, particularly the Europeans, have failed, and they failed almost on the first day when they failed to even impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Yes, it avoided war with Russia, but by avoiding war with Russia, you ceded Ukraine or the semblance of Ukrainian independence to Russia.
Nicholas, thank you so much. Thanks for your thoughts this morning. Good to speak to you.
Thank you.
That's Nicholas Williams, Senior Associate Fellow at the European Leadership Network Defence Think Tank.